Last time, we explored the origins of psychology, structuralism, functionalism, psychoanalysis, behaviorism, humanism, and the cognitive revolution. Each of these schools of thought helped shape the discipline we know today. But where does psychology stand right now? What does modern psychology look like, and what do psychologists actually do in the real world? That brings us to Section 1.3, Contemporary Psychology, and Section 1.4, Careers in Psychology. Section 1.3, Contemporary Psychology. Today, psychology is a broad and diverse discipline, far more inclusive and complex than it was in its early years. Rather than being dominated by a single school of thought, psychology now consists of multiple perspectives, each focusing on different aspects of the mind and behavior. Let's walk through some of the main areas that define psychology today: biopsychology and evolutionary psychology. One major branch is biopsychology, also known as biological psychology. Biopsychologists investigate how the brain, nervous system, and genes influence behavior. For example, they might study how certain neurotransmitters affect mood, or how brain injuries impact memory and decision-making. Closely related is evolutionary psychology, which applies Darwin's theory of natural selection to behavior. Evolutionary psychologists ask questions like, why do humans experience fear? Why do certain social behaviors persist across cultures? The idea is that many of our psychological traits evolved because they offered survival advantages. For instance, fear of snakes may have helped our ancestors avoid danger. Cognitive psychology. Another major area is cognitive psychology, which focuses on thought processes such as memory, problem-solving, language, and decision-making. This area grew out of the cognitive revolution we discussed earlier. Cognitive psychologists might study how we remember faces, why we sometimes make irrational choices, or how children acquire language. Developmental psychology. Developmental psychology examines how people change across the lifespan, from infancy to old age. Developmental psychologists might study how children learn to speak, how adolescents form their identities, or how memory changes in older adults. Importantly, developmental psychology emphasizes that growth is influenced by both biology and environment. Personality psychology. Personality psychology focuses on the enduring traits and patterns of thought and behavior that make individuals unique. Personality psychologists often study traits such as introversion versus extroversion, openness to experience, or conscientiousness. They ask, why are some people more prone to anxiety? Why do others seem naturally resilient? This field often overlaps with clinical psychology in trying to understand personality disorders as well. Social psychology. Social psychology explores how people interact with one another and how individuals are influenced by groups. This area studies topics like prejudice, persuasion, conformity, obedience, attraction, and aggression. For example, why do people obey authority figures even when it leads to harmful actions? Why do some individuals conform to group pressure while others resist? Social psychology helps us understand the power of social influence in everyday life. Industrial organizational (IO) psychology. Moving into applied areas, industrial organizational psychology examines behavior in the workplace. Industrial psychology focuses on hiring, training, and evaluating employees, while organizational psychology looks at broader issues like teamwork, leadership, and workplace culture. For example, an IO psychologist might help a company design fair hiring practices or increase employee motivation. Health, clinical, and counseling psychology. One of the largest areas is clinical psychology, which involves diagnosing and treating mental illnesses. Clinical psychologists often work with individuals experiencing depression, anxiety, or more severe disorders like schizophrenia. Counseling psychology is closely related, but often focuses on less severe issues such as stress, relationship difficulties, or career guidance. Another growing area is health psychology, which examines how biological, psychological, and social factors influence health. Health psychologists might study how stress contributes to heart disease, or how people can be encouraged to adopt healthier lifestyles. Forensic psychology. Finally, we have forensic psychology, which applies psychological principles to the legal system. Forensic psychologists may assess defendants' mental competence to stand trial, provide expert testimony in court, or help law enforcement with criminal profiling. In summary, contemporary psychology is not a single perspective. It is a collection of subfields, each asking different questions but contributing to a more complete understanding of the human mind and behavior. This diversity allows psychology to be applied in countless settings, from hospitals to schools, from businesses to courtrooms. Section 1.4, Careers in Psychology. Now, let's turn to what this all means for careers in psychology. Many of you may be wondering, what can I actually do with a psychology degree? The answer is quite a lot: academic and research careers. Some psychologists pursue careers in academia. These individuals typically teach at universities and conduct research. They contribute to scientific knowledge by running experiments, publishing papers, and training the next generation of psychologists. For example, a cognitive psychologist might study how stress affects memory, while a developmental psychologist might research the effects of parenting styles on child development. Clinical and counseling careers. Many psychologists work directly with clients in clinical or counseling roles. Clinical psychologists often work in hospitals, mental health clinics, or private practices, treating people with psychological disorders. Counseling psychologists, on the other hand, may work in schools, community centers, or private settings, helping individuals manage stress, improve relationships, or navigate life transitions. It's important to note that in most countries, including the United States, becoming a licensed psychologist requires a graduate degree, usually a PhD or PsyD, as well as supervised clinical training and licensing exams. Applied careers. Psychologists are also in demand in applied fields. Industrial organizational psychologists work with businesses to improve productivity and employee satisfaction. Forensic psychologists apply psychology in legal contexts. Sports psychologists help athletes manage anxiety and improve performance. Military psychologists provide support to service members coping with the stresses of combat and deployment. Careers with a bachelor's degree, but even if you don't pursue graduate study, a bachelor's degree in psychology is extremely valuable. Psychology graduates work in human resources, social services, education, sales, and healthcare support roles. The reason is simple. Psychology teaches transferable skills, understanding human behavior, analyzing data, communicating effectively, that are valuable in almost any workplace. Closing thoughts. So to summarize, psychology today is not one thing, but many things. It is a field rich with subdisciplines, each offering unique insights into the human condition. And it is also a field full of career opportunities, ranging from scientific research to therapy, from corporate consulting to legal expertise. Psychology is everywhere, in classrooms, in hospitals, in courtrooms, in businesses, in sports arenas. And whether you pursue psychology professionally or simply study it to better understand people, the knowledge you gain will be useful in every area of life. As we move deeper into this course, I want you to remember this. Psychology is not just about learning theories and memorizing names. It is about applying knowledge to real people in real situations, and ultimately, it is about improving the quality of human life.